Chapter 4. The one I plan to save saves me. When I got to my first class, interdimensional trajectorial calculations, I found that I couldn't concentrate. There were 3 things on my mind all day. 1. How will I save Speelsa? 2. Kai. 3. What would Sidalfa think? I got my answer after the day concluded and I rushed to take KZG.
A what?
Sidalfa said. Yeah, he's real docile, I said. I made friends with him.
You did what?
Yeah. And I figured that if he stays good, we can make him into the first honorary CITATION.
Into what?
I sighed in exasperation. This was literally the 50th time I explained it to him, and it didn't seem to be helping, and I was getting frustrated.
Look, buddy,
Sidalfa sighed.
I've believed most of everything you've told me before, but a corrupted minion on Speelsa?
Yes, but like I've said before, he's docile. Plus he's really friendly when you meet him.
I really hate shooting you down, but there's never been such a case.
Until now.
We don't know. No, I take that back. You and I don't know, but one person does.
You mean that Oracle?
Yes, her.
Then why not ask her?
Because she only comes around every so often. You and I both know. That's because that's how often you call her.
Sidalfa seemed taken aback, frightened even by this comment, but when I looked down at myself I realized why. I had been glowing red, and for the first time I realized how angry I was. I let my anger subside. The glow faded. Look, Dad. All I'm saying is that you shouldn't cast people out just because of where they come from.
No one is casting them out. I'm just cautious, is all.
You're sure about that? I sighed.
Yes,
He struggled with the words.
I'm positive.
I sighed through my nose, a sign that Sidalfa took to mean that I didn't believe him.
Come on, buddy,
he said.
You know I'm just trying to protect you.
No response.
Okay, I get it, he continued. I'm being unfair.
Still no answer.
I'm acting like the sword divinitus, aren't I?
He asked. No. But you're not acting like the king either. Sidalfa went silent. You just sat there and let Speelsa be taken. How could you do that? You know she didn't do anything wrong. Sidalfa contemplated this, sighing through his nose.
You're right,
he finally said.
I didn't do anything. You fought, or nearly did, while I quite literally just stood there and watched.
I said nothing.
And I can see where you get frustrated. You ask me to move, and I don't. You ask me not to, and I do.
I stayed silent.
Here's my proposition now. I won't do anything about it,
he started.
Unless you say something first. The final call is still mine to make, but I do need to be more attentive in what certain specific people tell me. So, until he does something detrimental to the well-being of the planet as a whole, I'll leave it be. Deal?
I smiled and said, Fogati.
All right. Cool. Now go train or something, and keep me posted.
Okay, I said as I turned to leave. Sidalfa stopped me again.
One more thing,
he said.
Is your mother back yet?
She should be. Why?
Just need to talk to her.
I'll let her know you asked.
Thank you, buddy.
And with that, I left. The next couple of days were a bit more promising. After the incident, Laphicris gave me an internal component to help with the detection of certain ores. By this time, I had recovered from the interference overload of the Rhaegar collapse, but not without a bit of auditory damage. With the aid of this new equipment, I was able to spread out and find various ore deposits. A few things I wasn't able to bring back due to super high radiation levels. These deposits mostly consisted of gamma radialamatin and luminesional. For those deposits, which were sizable, I had to call Laphacris, who had to call a team to extract it. Laphacris, being the cool boss she was, always gave me decently sized chunks of each for my own purposes, provided it was properly contained first. At school, I had sparring and swordplay with Kai almost every day. Not only did this bring me closer to my goal, but it made Kai my best friend. And Sadalfa said all corrupted were evil, I thought. If that were true, then Kai was an exception. He even taught me a few things that I didn't know.
You know,
He said while we were sparring.
protocords is fluid in terms of solidity. Well, duh!
I grunted, swinging my energy blade in a wide arc over his head. It's why we live so long off of it. And also why so many buildings and energy-based structures are built from it.
I'm just saying, 'cause that shard around your neck is no different.
What do you mean?
If you think about it, most structures are just giant lumps of protocords molded into something.
Really?
Mm-hmm. And the reason why the building shifted shape is because the owners make it shift.
How?
Thought. By imagining what something will look like, the protocords can be molded into that form.
You're saying that if I imagine this shard being a sword, it'll turn into a sword?
Kai swept his hand as though to say, well, duh.
Well, alright, I said. If it doesn't work, at least you have the satisfaction of laughing at my looking constipated. Kai nodded as if to say,
yeah, that seems right.
I slipped the shard off my neck and held it in front of me. I still felt the engravings of Speelsa's last words to me. I focused on the shard and concentrated on changing its shape. Sword, I thought. Immediately the shard elongated into a 3-foot-long double-edged sword. It had simplicity. I like that. But it also had a look of ornamentality and regality. The combination of simplicity and ornamentality was perfectly balanced, so much so that it reminded me of...
Yo, Pax,
Kai yelled, jolting me from my thoughts. Huh? I asked, taking notice of everything around me.
You okay?
Yeah, I blinked. I realized that my eyes were tearing up with protocords. Just looking at the sword made me think of Speelsa. I knew I cared, but why so much? I just got something in my eye.
Right. Anyways, cool blade.
Yeah, materialized a little quicker than I was expecting.
Gonna name it?
Oh, I thought quickly, but for lack of a better name, I'll call it Shard.
You are a master of naming stuff.
Shut up, Kai. He chuckled, and as he did so, a thought surfaced. Hey, Kai.
Yeah?
What's it like, being a dark being? Kai sighed.
Well, it's not exactly a friend magnet, nor does it make you seem cool, contrary to popular belief. Those goth wannabes or edgy pretenders or whatever they're called have no idea the meaning of darkness.
Do you wish you were ever, I don't know, different?
We're all different, Pax.
Still.
Don't worry about it. Let's just test that new blade of yours.
Kai lifted his now flaming hand and shot 4 fireballs around me. Each one formed into a solid flaming version of Kai, each of whom looked very murderous.
The object,
Kai advised,
is to kill them all at once. You can't fight one without turning your back on the other 3.
Okay, I thought. Thanks for the heads up. The flame clones advanced on me. Each was 5 feet away. The one in front charged. I lunged and slammed his face with Shard's pommel. He staggered backwards, and I immediately flipped the blade around and smashed Shard's pommel into the stomach of the Kai behind me. I then willed the blade to extend an extra foot before swiping in a sideways arc. vaporizing the 3 Kais in front and on either side of me. Immediately after the swipe, I did a backward somersault over the head of the rear, now retching Kai. Upon landing, I shoved Shard's blade straight through the last Kai's chest. As he disintegrated, I turned and looked at the real Kai, who stood with a look of shock.
"Dude," he said. "What the corrupted H, man?"
I didn't know what to say. Sorry?
Sorry. Dude, that was the most awesome thing I've ever seen.
Thanks.
I just wish... Wait.
He turned and looked around.
"Aha, there,"
he said, pointing at a ceiling-mounted camera in the corner of the room.
"You gotta show this to the Sword Divinitas." That got my attention.
Whoa, Kai, I said. You know we're not on good terms. If I send that to her...
I don't mean right now. You're planning on saving that girl, right?
Well, yeah, but what does my skill have to do with...
Blackmail.
Say what?
Yeah, blackmail. You were just a kid when you met her, right? Think how surprised she'll be to see how much you've improved.
Maybe, but that doesn't seem right.
Newsflash. Speelsa being taken in the first place wasn't right.
He had a point. I couldn't go very long without getting mad about what happened, nor could I argue with something I already knew. All right. What do I do? Kai's smile almost made me sorry. I asked.
Just talk to your father at break, he said. I'll handle the details.
The bell rang. Sword class ended. I willed Shard to go back to its original form, slipping it back on the leather cord as I did so. It was the first break before the next class. I had an hour and a half. I got ready to contact Sidelpha. Hopefully he wasn't busy. At the risk of being yelled at by the rest of the council, I activated my holophone and rattled off Sidelpha's CRE number for the recipient's line. I braced myself for the yelling of Vortex or Nucleus Present, and what I got was worse. The holographic image that materialized was not my father, but an interstellar nightmare. Vortex was dressed in rapper clothes, and he had braided his usually hidden cerulean hair into dreadlocks. Or if it was already like that, I knew why the helmets on at all times rule existed. So he looked like the Terrian rapper Li Zhou, or, as the Terrians would call him, Lil Jon. It was a really bad look. I decided to record this conversation for future reference. Is this a joke? I asked Li Zhou Vortex. Because if so, I'm totally laughing now. Coughed Li Zhou Vortex.
You, what you want, fool?
I was silent for a couple of seconds. Dude, I said, momentarily disregarding the chain of command. Really?
So what? I was alone. I just wanted to see how Sidelpha acts.
My opinion on Vortex changed right there.
Seriously, though, what do you want?
Is Sidelpha around? I need to talk to him.
Yes, I'll find him for you.
Wait.
What?
How did you answer my dad's CRE number? Are you wearing my dad's helmet?
No.
Holy Trimus, you are.
So what if I am?
You've got a problem.
I do not. Anyways, I promise to be in your debt should you not speak of this to your father.
Sure, I thought. What he didn't know is that this conversation was streaming back to Sidelpha as we spoke. I wasn't technically telling Sidelpha, but no way was I going to let Vortex let this down without some humor. But I didn't say that. I said something safer. All right, then.
Very well.
He sighed in relief. The image of Li Zhou Vortex disappeared and I was left with hollow static. A few minutes later, the static converted into another face I recognized.
What's up, buddy boy?
Said the holographic visage of Sidelpha. Hey, Dad. Listen, I need to talk to you. It's about Speelsa. Sidelpha immediately became alert.
What's wrong, buddy?
He asked. Well, you know I have to free her. But we have a plan now.
We? Who's we?
Me and Kai. Sidelpha pondered this.
Alright. What's the plan?
I told Sidelpha about what Kai and I talked about in the training room, about using the tape to blackmail Pandorianius.
Off the record,
Sidelpha started.
I'd gladly tell you to stick it to her.
Officially?
You do understand what you're getting yourself into, right? She's a divine entity, and as much as I want to, I doubt I'll be able to do much to protect you if you go through with this.
Yes, don't remind me. But I'll be okay. I'm tough, like you and Mom. Sadelfa gave a resigned smile.
Do you have the recording?
He sighed. We will. Soon, I'm hoping.
Will you send me a copy to review when you obtain it, please?
Of course.
Okay. Well, let me know the details Kai mentioned as they happen. Just want to be in on things.
Gotcha.
Oh, and by the way, I'm going to talk to your mom tomorrow.
What?
Yeah, she just got back.
I had lost track of the days thinking about Speelsa and Kai, so I had forgotten when my mom was supposed to be back. Awesome. Thanks, Dad.
No worries, bud.
Sadelfa signed off. I deactivated my holophone and walked to my next class just to lose the stress of getting there on time. When I arrived, no one save for the teacher, Ali Starstrike, was there.
Hello, Mr. Pax,
she said when I walked in. Hi, Miss Starstrike, I replied as I approached my seat. When I looked at my desk, I saw 2 Cadonian data and access disks, or KDADs, and a note which read,
Dr. Natalia, Basu, and Ladasha.
This must have been Kai's first phase. I recorded what I saw and sent the info to Sadelfa. If he was telling me to talk to those 3, then I knew where I needed to go. After I figured out the first phase, I shut down all my external senses save for my hearing and switched to my virtual internal senses. It was here that I checked on a project I'd been working on since Speelsa's capture. It was an interdimensional computer that could track, create, open, and record the history of any time-space jump. It was called the Nexus. So far, the system worked beautifully. Since my last virtual check, more than 500 trillion space-time jumps have been performed. Most of these jumps were performed by Prime and Cybonians with their various space bridge technologies. The other jumps were performed by a few Terrians with a technology similar to the Nexus. My Nexian computers took a while to register the software, but after a few minutes, the system identified the Terrian tech as a relative time-based dimension. The system wasn't far enough in the scan to identify the vessel that housed it, but it wouldn't have made much difference. At that moment, the bell rang. I switched from virtual mode and back into reality. When I was fully immersed in the real world, I noticed a huge number of people filing into the double-leveled room. When the whole class arrived, a total of 86 teenage students were present. Among those 86 was Ladasha. She was with 2 others I didn't recognize, but all 3 nodded when they saw me. Ladasha mouthed,
Kai.
I nodded and pulled out the 2 KDADs. They nodded again and looked forward toward the teacher. I tried to follow suit, but I found it slightly difficult. Part of it had to do with me hearing tiny bits of conversation from mainly the back parts of the room, but the main reason was because I realized I was still staring in the trio's direction. From what they were wearing, which wasn't much more than black leather jackets, each outlined with a different color seam, they looked like they were going to a nightclub. With a start, I realized that Ladasha was with Natalia and Basu. One of them, who I guessed to be Natalia due to the pie symbol embroidered on her jacket, caught me staring. She gave me a flirtatious look that made me go completely red in the face. I immediately looked away. I couldn't see her, but somehow I knew she was silently laughing at me. I let it pass, but I made a vow to keep my guard up against that kind of thing. Class proceeded as normal with our new topic, space-time jumps. I didn't necessarily pay much attention, mostly because I knew what we were talking about, and partially because of the plan I had in mind. Class ended, and the second I was out the door, I switched to jet form and Mach 7'd it to my home in Subis Centaulum. When I arrived, I switched back to Cadenoid form and knocked on the door. I was so excited to see my mom, Rhaenys Major, but when the door opened, the main reason I stayed away from home the majority of the time answered. "Big man!" yelled my smiling brother, Isicianius Pax. Isicianius was well-mannered, but he had a habit of trying to mimic a lot of what I did. I didn't mind too much, but it did get annoying after a while. After the collapse at the minefield, he never brought up how it happened. He instead was more interested in my transformation. What I wasn't aware of at the time, or at the time that I saved Kai, was that I had achieved a state known as superactivity, which, given my Gurian side, made sense, and explained the golden fiery aura. But ever since then, Isicianius resolved to dyeing his hair and eyebrows a golden blonde color, which only succeeded in turning his very dark blue hair, which we genetically shared, a very ill shade of green. I felt ill looking at it the first time, but I got past it. I grunted. Hello, Sai. Man, how come you never visit? The reason's right in front of me. Despite his annoyingness, I had to smile too. What? Nothing. Nothing I haven't said before. You ever gonna change your hair back? Why should I? I'm just saying, it won't be as special when you unlock the real thing, my guy. Man, it took forever to get it like this. I sighed and laughed. So, what you here for? Is Mom home? Isicianius smiled. Mom? He called. A moment later, the air shifted. The instant after, the figure of my mother appeared, still dressed in her royal purple armor, the Cadonian flag symbol etched onto her breastplate, and her Helicidium sword sheathed on her back. She was holding her helmet, which she forged herself from a meteor of Precordium steel before I was made, under her right arm.
Yes?
She asked.
What's wrong?
Isicianius pointed and Rhaenys turned, dropping her helmet and breaking into a smile when she saw me. Hi, Mom, I said.
Isaac,
She exclaimed.
you're home. How are you?
Good, I said. I just came by to see you. I must have looked worse than I felt.
Are you alright?
She asked. Mostly. Did, Sidalfa talk to you?
Indeed he did. Sai, could you give us a minute?
Yeah, sure, Isicianius said. My brother went back inside, closing the door behind him.
What's going on?
She asked.
What's happened?
Well, I began. About a Salem ago, I had an altercation with the sword divinitus.
What happened with that?
I explained to her what happened when I fought the Dark Warrior, and then what happened afterwards. About the mine, about Blastic, my transformation, and all my feelings during and after. By the time I was finished, Rhaenys was in tears.
Poor girl.
She said, her voice breaking.
And you, in that mine.
She left me this shard, I explained, and I've got a plan to save her. Kai helped me figure it out.
Kai. You mean the potential Kuete?
Yes. And despite it being my mission, I have a feeling I won't be able to do it alone.
Sidalfa told me you'd say something like that, which is why I put some things together for you.
She went back into the house and came back out a minute later with a red and blue box etched with my initials.
When I heard about Kai, I figured you'd be able to make him your friend. So give this to him.
She pressed an orange crystal into my hand. I smiled and she handed me the box.
Everything else is for you.
Inside were various metal scraps and ores that I knew I could refine later with Laphacris's help. Turning my forearm over, a compartment opened, which revealed a storage space between the fortified casing that housed the mechanical and organic structures that made up my very complicated arm. I placed the crystal, the ores, and the scraps between that space, and looked at my mother. Thank you, Mom, I managed to say.
It's alright, hon. Just do what you gotta.
I will.
And if that sword divinitus crosses you at any time, you whip her sorry immortal behind.
Of course.
Well, get going. There's a lot riding on you if you want to save this girl.
Will you be staying?
I doubt it will be long enough for us to see each other for a while, and I've done all I could to help you as of now.
All right. Thanks again.
No problem. And Isaac?
Yes?
I love you.
Love you too, Mom. She hugged me and then went back inside. I stood at the door wondering if I should knock again, but then I remembered Kai's first phase. I shifted form and jetted off. I guess I should explain the topography of where I live. Before, I was on the upper surface of Speelsa, which is divided into 6 parts, 3 planii and 3 subai. The planii were the bigger chunks of the upper surface. The subai were smaller subsections. Planium Embramus was where the Terrians resided. They provided most of the planet's food and fuel supply. Planium Batalionis is where the Gurians reside. This is basically the planet's military force and warrior training facilities. Finally, Planium Cybonis is where the Cybonians live. These guys developed the new technologies that are used across the whole planet. Subis Sayum is where the Gurumans lived. They protect the planetary vault, which contains priceless records and the planetary currency. Subis Cybin is where the Cybogurians, like myself, live. Everyone here is mostly a forger, and they produce armor for the warriors. Like I said before, I never had much love for the forges, or its owner, so I don't stay there. Lastly was Subis Cybrum. It was here that the Cybonomans lived. Everyone here was either a miner or a refiner. They searched for any new ores within the planet, as well as material foreign to the planet altogether. Below the upper surface Planii and Subai is the lower or inner surface. This is Subis Centalum. Much like the upper surface, it is divided into 6 parts. However, Centalum was dedicated to people who were trispecies, not necessarily Getaichi, but normally bred trispecies, or those who, offspring-wise, would breed a trispecies. My only guess for such a division would be because the Getaichi could feel closer to their creator. After I left my mom's, I mocked north towards the horizon where crystalline light became beams. Camellato, Party Central on Speelsa. As I got closer, the sound of music became louder. Many kinds blared, but I couldn't focus on them. Partly because I was focused on my mission, but mostly because the music was so loud that if I tried to concentrate, my audio receptors would overload from something I now called HD, or hyperdecibelity. Because of my prolonged exposure to Rhaegar's destructive interference, I became sensitive to very minute sounds, hence why, if I focus on the music for too long, my auditory sensory array is overloaded. After passing the crystal border, I switched from jet form, walking the second my feet hit the ground. I was stunned at the sheer number of people here. Then again, I probably shouldn't have been. It was Party Central. More than once I had to dodge mob groups and the occasional tossing of an entree. Jeez, I thought. I wonder what these people are like on a normal basis. I kept going, still no clue about where I was supposed to go. After an hour of searching, I decided to sit and think. I found a nearby bench, preferably one that wasn't covered in mystery food, and sat down. I wasn't sure where to go or who to ask for that matter. Everyone was either busy dancing, throwing food, or some other party-worthy act. That's when I noticed movement in front of me. 3 people, each in matching black suits, were walking towards me, long-range scans indicating that they were feminine. Nonetheless, they looked serious. Uh-oh, I thought. Fun police. I figured that they'd arrest me for not having enough fun, or being the only one sitting down. I was wrong. Hello, one of them said, starting to smile at me. She was about average teen height, with an average but curvy build. Hi, I said skeptically. Something wrong? Yes, said the second, who was a little slimmer, in a matter-of-fact manner. With you. How are you not enjoying yourself? Her suit, now that it was closer, I could see had a spotted pattern printed on her leggings, and much like her other friends, was very form-fitting. Nonetheless, I ignored it. I'm looking for someone. 3 someones, actually. And who might that be? Asked the third, who was rather similar looking to the first. Officer. Natalia, Ladasha, and Basia. They all looked at each other and conversed amongst themselves. All of them giggled at one point, but already having heard the music here and knowing what that would do to me, I decided not to focus on it. The one with the spotted pattern then pulled out an earpiece and spoke into it. Hey, Ann, she said. Yeah, it's Ty. Listen, do me a favor and put your beacon up. Someone says they're looking for you. Garbled chatter came from the other end. Oh, it's, She turned to me. What's your name? Isicianius Pax, I said. Ty repeated it. More garbled chatter. Alright, Ty said. Thanks. She put the earpiece away and turned to me again. Okay, just look for the symbol in the sky. I nodded. Thanks, I said, switching back to jet mode. This startled the trio, and I could feel their eyes on me as I mocked away. Immediately after doing so, a shaft of indigo-colored light rose into the sky. I looked up and saw that it had a pi symbol at the top. I flew towards the light and followed it down when I reached it. As I reached the bottom, I saw that the beam was emitted from a single metallic cubic building. I thought it odd that such a light would protrude from such a simple-looking place. When I touched down, I switched back to my Cadenoid form and pulled out one of the K-Dads that had been left on my desk at school. It had the same symbol I saw in the sky. I plugged it into a rectangular access port on the space where I thought the door to be. The port beeped 7 times. Try, sin, try, I realized. A bigger rectangular outline around the port began to glow, only to dissipate along with the space it outlined to reveal a doorway. I walked through it, and it solidified behind me. In front of me was a scene fit to make any teenager happy, and any sane parent ban any movie that was rated over G to their children. Flirtatious dancers left and right, most of which in very showy clothes if any. Just find the trio, I thought, trying not to look flustered, and get out. I figured it'd be easy to find a bartender. It wasn't. I had to walk past 8 stages before finding a bartender in what looked like the center of the building. I sat down in one of the chairs, already uncomfortable about my being here. "Hey," someone said. I looked up. It was the bartender dressed in what looked like tarot leopard skin. "What'll it be?" "Oh," I said, chuckling. Sorry, I'm not here for a drink." She shrugged. "Well, if you're looking for a dance, I'm happy to give one. For a price." "Not here for that either." I was growing increasingly more nervous, which she evidently noticed. "Relax. It's not all business here." She left her spot at the bar since no one was approaching and sat in the seat next to mine. "What brings you here? Just looking to cool off for a while?" I took a breath, trying not to let it rattle. "I'm looking for the boss of this place. Natalia, I think it was." "Is she expecting you?" "I'm fairly certain she is." The bartender nodded. "Well, follow me." She led me through the crowds of dancers and spectators, many of whom were giving me blush-inducing looks. She led me to the back of the building where a door that was etched with a big N stood, big enough so that people knew who the club belonged to, but not conspicuous enough for people to think it was a door. "Straight through here. Not like she ever leaves the door open, though. You got a K-Dad?" I nodded and showed it to her. "All right," she said. "See you around, Mr. Pax," I said. "Isicianius Pax." "Ah, you're the one Panda keeps talking about." Panda? "Yeah, the sword deity." I exhaled heavily. "Look, I'm not gonna report you to her. Not my job. Plus, the stuff she was talking about really seems strange." "Strange how?" "She said there was a conspirator in her forges, and you had thought she was innocent. The person Panda suspected, I mean." I said nothing. "Was she innocent?" I held my silence only because I knew that if I spoke, I'd get angry. My anger was not something I needed to direct on the bartender right now. She seemed to understand this to an extent, because she quickly changed the subject. "I'm Celeflam. I'll, be the first to warn you that most that go in there never come out the same." "Thanks for the tip." She nodded and left me at the entrance. Just before she disappeared, I called to her. "Celeflam." Huh? She turned, suddenly confused. I smiled and said, "Robeske." She smiled and went back to her counter. I figured I should give her at least a bit of patronage since she helped me. Turning back to the door, I plugged the same K-Dad into a slot where a traditional doorknob would have been, and the door opened the same way as before. I went inside and found 3 people, one of whom I immediately recognized as Ladasha. They seemed to be talking, but not of anything of great importance. I cleared my throat, and the 3 heads turned towards me.
"Oh, cool,"
Ladasha said.
"You made it."
"Not like I had anything better to do," I said, joking.
"Obviously."
"So, what did Kai need to talk to me about? I assume this is phase 1? "Yup," said another, whom I guessed to be Natalia based on the logo on the top part of her attire. "We know where your girlfriend was taken." "Okay, first, not my girlfriend, and I already know where she was taken. Or at least, I have a pretty good idea where. The Forge's dungeon prison." "Well, I would hope you'd know where she was taken. Do you know how to get there? Yeah, my boss showed me. My eyes grew brighter and proceeded to project the holographic image of the map from Tree Sa to the prisons. Impressive, but allow me to rephrase. Can you get there undetected? Obviously the way from Tree Sa is the most expected route, and even then you still wouldn't be able to get in without an appointment, a specially modified KDAD, or being a guard in the first place. Fair point. Plus, if what Kai told us is true, the Sword Divinitist has probably banned you from visiting altogether, if not just from Speelsa, was it? Everything Natalia said, I hadn't even considered as a possibility. This needed a lot more consideration than I was expecting. I said, slightly discouraged. So, how do I go undetected? Talk to her sister, said the third member, whom I guessed to be Baisiu. She's got a sister? Yeah, her twin. She's technically a warrior in disguise, just like her sister. What do you mean? I can't confirm this about Speelsa, but I met her sister once. She was going through a rough patch in her life. When I met her, she confided in me that she had fought in some big war a long time ago. Big war? The Sanekue? That's the one. But she'd seen things that most people probably would think is the stuff of legend. I tend not to remember those details. Understandable given that war's nature. But what about Speelsa? That's where the details get fuzzy. Fuzzy how? Yeah, Baisiu, Natalia said with playful curiosity. Do tell. You never talked about this before. Chuckling, Baisiu kept eye contact with me. She told me, Baisiu started warily, she and her sister fought as one. Like in perfect sync? I asked. Or... You could say that. Though, after the war, the two were never really the same. Trauma from something like that will do major mental damage. That explains why Speelsa didn't want me fighting that thing a Salem ago. But not how she and her sister were... one. Not like she had much time to tell you, bud. I nodded. True. As much as I've told you, that might not even be the whole story. That's just what I know. And I appreciate that. Thank you. But may I ask one more question? Shoot. How did you meet her? Baisiu paused. Natalia ended up speaking first. As scantily clad as we are, she began, we actually are not the Sriklu you think we are. What do you mean? We're... an agency. For what? We look for corruption. Like... dark beings? Natalia chuckled and shook her head. No. I mean governmental. Oh. I didn't think there was a team for that. There's a team for everything, Ladasha said. Even the boring stuff. Still, that's what we're paid for, Baisiu said. Literally sitting around until people like you come along looking to give this divinity what for. I mean, that doesn't sound boring, I said. Given the fear of divine retribution from any of the deities with some people, it sounds pretty dangerous, but it's good work. You over-exaggerate our role, Natalia laughed. But your perspective is more flattering. I smiled. You know, Ladasha spoke up. You're doing a lot for Speelsa. She was a friend who was wrongfully taken, I stated, shrugging. Few people go to the lengths that you've gone to. So? So? Are you sure you don't see her as more than a friend? Ladasha looked smugly at Natalia, who also had a smug look on her face. Come on, guys. My face had never been redder. They're just teasing, Baisiu said, directing a very commanding gaze at the other two. Anyway, you'll find Speelsa's sister at the Enos. That's the rock concert building across from here. I imagine that's where most of the music comes from in this place?
More or less.
Alright. Just for clarity, what would I be doing at a rock concert?
She could give you access to the Jata networks.
Jata networks?
It's a series of tunnels,
Natalia said.
created by my police force, Jet and Ashby and Ty.
Ah, the three I met at the bench.
Yeah. The three monitor Camelotto to find potential clients if they haven't already arranged to meet with us.
So, the three clue thing is...
Everyone needs a hobby,
Natalia said, winking.
You looking to partake in it?
Celeflam tried that. I'm good. The trio snickered and I processed everything they told me. New objective. Find Speelsa's sister and then find Speelsa. Anyway, thank you all. I'll be sure to tell Speelsa you helped. I turned to leave, but Ladasha stopped me.
Wait,
She said.
Kai asked me to give this to you.
I turned and saw that Ladasha had something in her hand. It was a palm-sized cartridge with 2 magnetic holes through it, a video storage card. A little dated in terms of practicality, but it looked brand new. What is... I began asking, but then I realized what it was. Oh, the recording from the training room. Thanks.
No problem.
I remember wondering how Kai got it.
And, one more thing.
Natalia said.
Can I have my disc back, please and thank you?
I was confused until I remembered the KDAT I used to get in here. I held it up, and Natalia nodded. This is your key.
Duh. You think I'm just gonna let people have unlimited access to this place?
Fair point. She came over and took it, slipping it down her shirt without breaking eye contact or her smile. I took a deep breath and sighed.
Cat got your tongue?
No, I just have a lot to process. This was true, but I decided to try to joke about it. This place is probably 40% of that. They lightly laughed and I smiled, leaving them to enjoy their night after that. As I closed the door, I spotted a group of people walking in. When I saw who was in the lead, my anger spiked, but not enough for me to lose my common sense and cause a commotion. Pendorianius had come. She hadn't noticed me, and she seemed to be in conversation. I decided to tail her to find out what she was talking about. Hoping to not get caught, I found an empty spot beneath the counter and crawled under it, my intention being to try to listen in on the deity. My plan was nearly thwarted when I heard her voice approaching. I had almost thought she had caught me, but her voice remained the same and didn't indicate any form of knowing I was there. She chose the chair directly in front of where I was crouching. Luckily, the counter's indentation was deep. As a result, if I pressed myself against the back, I could narrowly avoid visual detection. The chairs were also high enough that no one who sat would immediately see me. Pendorianius sat down, and I dared not move.
Indeed.
Her shoes were in my face the whole time, but I was able to eavesdrop on what she was saying.
She will be sentenced for life.
She was saying.
Never again will she walk this planet's terrain. Same debate, huh?
Came a voice I recognized as Celeflam.
Indeed. She has been a thorn in my side for much too long.
Pendorianius was nothing if not flamboyant with her gestures. She actually kicked me, and I had to resist my now combat-driven urge to grab her leg and fling her out the door she came in.
Footstools. Finally, a step up for this place.
She didn't even bother looking. She slid her shoes off, which seemed undivine to begin with, and placed her feet on my head. Curse my hair for being this length. Her toes kept pulling at it, and I had to sit there and not move. It was humiliating, to say the least. I'd give anything to be at anyone's feet but hers.
You must inform me of where you got these. I may require one later.
Her voice had softened, which surprised me, but nonetheless I kept still.
My boss handles those things,
Celeflam said, rightfully confused.
So you'll have to talk to her. Very well. At any rate, I still have to deal with that wretch. For too long she has conducted her business under my nose, and I will not have her jeopardizing the planet.
Well, if she is a conspirator, like you say, why not get rid of her?
She is technically my descendant. As such, she inherits many traits from me. My craft, my divine elegance, and my immortality.
I almost gasped out loud. Speelsa was immortal? How long has she really been around?
Sadly, disposal of such a stain is not a favorable outcome for me or this planet, nor will it be acceptable in the eyes of the king, the council, or Trimus himself.
Celeflam was silent for a number of seconds.
Death isn't the only way,
Celeflam finally said.
Sending this person to the right place isn't killing them.
Someone voiced the question I was burning to ask.
And just what place would that be?
Came the voice of Kai. Thank Trimus.
Ilosai Cult Fi,
Celeflam said calmly, silencing the group for a few more seconds. Pandorianius' toes curled into my hair more, as though she were cringing at the very thought of it. A cold chill went down my spinal cord, both as a result of the curling and when I heard those words.
It's the best prison I can think of. It won't kill this person, but it will drive them to insanity, leading them to do it themselves.
Not to instigate, but why go through with all that if you have the ability to just kill her? Not like you have to explain yourself if you do.
You obviously do not grasp the politics of the situation,
Pandorianius said with exasperation.
Enlighten me,
Kai said smugly.
As you know, Sedalfa's first mate Spawn ended up getting involved with the situation. As a result, purging her became that much more difficult, as he developed a bond with her instantaneously. Hence, Sedalfa would do anything to protect his progeny, as will his mother, whom I find to be more level-headed than the king.
If only you knew what she told me, I thought.
Are you sure you're not just afraid of his progeny? If I remember correctly, you said he displayed a power not seen in anyone for Salem's.
Pandoriania slammed her feet down in anger at this statement, forcing my head down to the ground, her clenched toes pulling a few hair strands from my scalp. I jerked back in instinct, which she didn't notice as she stood.
Repeat that again, and I will cut your tongue out and feed it to you.
I'm just curious.
Kai resigned.
Didn't mean to offend.
The deity grabbed her shoes while glaring at Kai. Despite the pain I felt on my head, I had kept still and refused to move until she had them on.
In any case, there is an easy solution to both.
Pandorianius raised her angry eyebrow in curiosity.
Trap them both in their actions.
This softened her gaze.
How so?
She asked skeptically.
Like I said, you don't need to explain yourself if your reasons are true, but nonetheless, going against a deity's wishes is cause for retribution.
Even if I managed to send her there, I doubt the boy would be that daft.
Well, think of it this way. You either win, or you win with no consequences.
Pandorianius was silent, seeming to ponder this.
I see. Well, carry on.
The divinitist departed, and after I was sure she was gone, I emerged from my hiding spot, scaring Celeflam half to death.
Pax?
Hey, I said, still processing what I heard.
How did you... I thought you'd be out by now.
So did I.
And you were under the table.
That's why she said footstool,
Celeflam realized.
She was... Oh, Trimus, I'm so sorry.
Kai started laughing.
If this place brings out everyone's wild side,
Kai snorted.
We now know what Pax is into.
Be that as it may, I interjected. Being her footstool is as humiliating as it seems. She kept pulling my hair and pulled some out.
Well, that explains your hairdo now.
Sighing, I let my power surge momentarily, forcing my hair back into its original aerodynamic spike formation.
Hope you know I'm telling this girl when we find her.
Better not.
Ha.
If I may,
Celeflam said.
Paxi, would you still like that robisque?
Paxi? Kai laughed. I think I need it after that conversation, I said, ignoring the sudden nickname. A few minutes later, Celeflam, Kai, and I were all sipping robisques.
Sorry about everything you heard, man,
Kai said.
Honestly, it was an information tactic.
You've been here before, I guessed. Which is how you knew of me. Kai nodded. I nodded. And she's been in here before. Hence the nickname. I said this to Celeflam.
Yeah,
she confirmed. And what's your reason for your part in the discussion? You think I need an immortal, angry sword divinitus on my tail? Fair. Still,
Yeah, that was kinda sucky of me to say.
No worries, I sighed. Do what you gotta to survive.
Well, I guess now that we know our next moves, Kai said, we gotta get to getting.
Yeah.
What did Natalia and her people say?
Basically, we gotta find Speelsa's sister. They said that she works at the Anos.
The Anos?
Celiflum asked.
That's going on right now.
Really?
Yeah. You guys better hurry if you want to get to her. Show's almost over.
Crud. Come on, Kai. Kai followed right behind me, but then I remembered the drinks. I went back to pay, digging in my arm cavity for a few impertals, only to be shooed away.
Go. It's on the house this time. Go save her.
Nonetheless, I managed to find a few and set it on the counter, running away to catch up to Kai.
Hey! Come get your
tip! I shouted as I reached the door. Kai pulled me along in the direction of the Anos, but our progress was constantly hindered by the now numerous crowds and mobs.
This is taking forever,
Kai shouted over the mobs. Not for long, I said, switching to jet mode.
Hop on.
Alright, good call, Pax.
Kai grabbed my fuselage and I took off.
We've only got a few minutes before the show ends.
Then you better hang on.
I hit Mach 7 and zipped east. The good thing about it is, I didn't hear Kai scream. At least, not until we landed, at which point Kai was still screaming.
Dude? You can, let go now.
Slowly, Kai released his grip. I could tell he was pretty shaken up. He further reinforced this when he said,
"Not a word about this to anyone."
If you say so, I said, laughing and switching out of jet form. I pulled out the other KDAD as we walked up to the door. I followed the same procedure as the other doors. It beeped and opened just the same. We went inside and found the show just ending.
Thank you, Speelsa,
the singer yelled.
Good night.
The spectators went crazy and they were literally forced out of the building by security. In the ensuing chaos, Kai and I managed to slip in, waiting for the rest of the spectators to clear out. It took a while, but finally all the spectators were escorted outside. Only Kai and I remained. When we emerged, the singer spotted us and came to meet us. Sort of.
Hey guys,
she said.
You know the show's over, right?
Yeah, I said, nearly speechless. She sounded just like Speelsa if she had been a singer instead of a forger.
Well, what you still here for? Last-minute autographs?
We actually came to talk to you,
Kai said.
Oh, really?
She said, walking back towards the stage.
About what?
Your sister.
The singer stopped walking. She turned back around, her face filled with concern.
What about her?
She's in danger,
Kai and I said simultaneously. The singer's face darkened. She put her hand to her ear and pressed a button.
Security,
she said.
Close off all entryways and turn off all the stage lights.
Shortly after, I heard the of closing doors all over the building. The stage went dark soon after, leaving only the little area where the three of us were standing eerily lit.
What happened?
I told the singer everything I knew relating to Speelsa's detainment. I then explained the conversations I heard between Kai, Celiflem, and Pendorianius. When I finished, she was rightfully silent with grief. After a time, she spoke.
It would explain why I suddenly stopped hearing from her. And how long ago did you say this happened?
About a Salem ago, I said.
And you sought me, her sister, because you thought I'd be able to help you, yes?
Essentially.
I'm assuming you talked to Natalia?
Yes, ma'am. She nodded and sighed.
Very well. I am Panos Speelsa, by the way.
The name reversal caught me by surprise. I'm Isicianius Pax. Not to sound offensive, but how did that happen?
What do you mean?
Your name. She looked panicked. Basia, one of Natalia's friends, told me that you and her sister were in the Sani Kue. She also said you guys were one before. She looked on the verge of tears, and immediately I felt bad. Never mind. I'm so sorry.
No. Don't worry.
She turned to me and looked me dead in my eyes for what seemed like forever. She then clasped my left hand in hers.
Warrior, you have a potential many would kill for, and a heart as big as you are strong. Hear me when I say, do only what you feel is right.
What do you mean?
I can believe your story. That unfortunately means that something bigger is brewing, and whatever it is, it boils down to you.
I'm not a warrior. I can fight, but I'm not a warrior.
Perhaps not in your heart, no. In your heart, you are a champion to all who need it, and when the time comes, you will fight as one with them.
How? Panos' gaze grew distant for a moment. She then looked at me, and then at Kai, who was silently taking in the ordeal. Kai nodded in my direction, and I heard Panos chuckle slightly.
You will know soon, champion of my twin.
I nodded, not really sure what she meant.
Now, I assume that since she's in the dungeon prison system, you'll want to use the Jata networks to get to her, right?
Yeah.
Understand that given your recent discovery, she may very well already be in transit.
We know that much,
Kai affirmed.
but it's the best we got.
Panos nodded.
All right. I'll do what I can, but you won't be able to go now, which unfortunately constrains your time frame even more.
We'll make it work, I decided. Not gonna let your sister rot.
Thank you, champion. Both of my sister's champions.
Of course.
Now go. If my fans get any ideas.
Say no more.
Kai said.
Thank you for your time.
Farewell.
Far away, Kai and I said. Everything that happened, I recorded and sent to Sadalfa as we left.
Well,
Kai said.
Looks like you got your route to Speelsa. More or less.
Yeah, but listen, Kai. I don't think I can do this on my own. I could very well use your help.
That's what I'm here for. But it's your mission.
True, but... She called us both champions for Speelsa. Kai shrugged.
You're the one making the moves.
I know, but you've been a help in facilitating them. I appreciate it.
No big deal, man.
I pulled out the box my mom had given me. I opened it and took out the orange shard. It is to me.
What's that?
Kai looked at the shard quizzically. I visited my mother before I came here.
Oh. How's she?
She's doing well, but she gave me this to give to you. I held the shard out to Kai.
Pax, what is this?
I want you to help me and fight by my side. Kai seemed caught off guard.
I don't know what to say.
He took the shard reverently. You don't have to. Kai held the shard out in front of him. It erupted in flames and grew into a 3-tipped sword as it did so.
Whoa.
My mom heard about you and your fire abilities. Figured that would be a good fit for you.
Pyro. That's what I'll call it.
So what do you say? Fight with me in this?
You know what, Pax?
Kai said, shrinking Pyro as he did so.
I'll do that. You're alright.
Thanks, Kai. Just know that whatever happens, I'll stand with you.
You know, I know you're a Cybogurian, but honestly, I think you've got some Tarian in you too.
I wanted to laugh, but found that I couldn't. Suddenly, everything I could previously hear was muted. A sickness creeped over me, and my mind was racked with the impendence of a doom-filled presence. All of my cybernetic systems crashed, and I sank to my knees. I guess I should have been glad that some of my biology is organic. Otherwise, I'm sure I would have short-circuited beyond repair. Not like this feeling was any better.
You have won nothing.
Said a deep voice in my head.
Just when you think you have everything, it will be taken away from you.
Who are you? I yelled aloud. Kai turned. Leave me alone.
Pax, What are you?
You are not long for this world.
The voice continued.
And neither is this planet.
Get out. Get out of my head.
Pax, what's wrong?
The voice, it's...
Will you accept the call, hero? Fight in vain to see your life and home destroyed.
I'm no hero. I'm not a warrior.
So you admit you're an enemy to your world?
No, I'm nothing of the sort. I was vaguely aware that I was glowing. I know who you are. Leave this world alone. Leave me alone.
Yes. Release your power. Show everyone who you are.
Immediately after this statement, a pair of evil-filled, darkness-infused eyes filled my sight. I couldn't cope. I screamed, and I heard an explosion. As quickly as my vision cleared, it failed. My hearing began to follow. I could feel my body burning from the inside. I collapsed, and all I could hear was Kai shouting,
Pax. Pax.
I wanted to respond, but I failed.
Oh, jeez. Medic!
I blacked out. You know the worst thing about Cybogurian blackouts? Despite your unconsciousness, you could still feel the excruciating pain you experienced before you went out. For the longest time, I couldn't feel a thing except the burning pain in my body and the pounding in my head. My mind was in flames. I almost thought I'd never wake up. Suddenly, I could see and hear again. I was lying on my back on a hover stretcher. Kai was above me, covered in burns, but otherwise unharmed. I groaned, and he looked down.
Hey, he said. You're gonna be just fine. Just hang on.
I looked ahead. I was being pushed towards a set of double doors. Upon passing through them, I blacked out again. When I came to again, I was still on my back, but this time I was on a bed. I felt a number of cords connecting into various spots on my body. Kai was frantically screaming at what I believed to be a doctor.
Do something,
He was saying.
Do something.
I'm sorry, sir, the doctor said, but there's nothing more we can do. I blacked out again, and my internal temperature spiked. Soon after my blackout, I came to again, but immediately something felt off. I could feel and see my body, but I woke to find that I was in complete darkness. I looked around for any signs of life. Just when I thought I wouldn't find any, I saw a streak of light far ahead of me. Now normally, I know you wouldn't walk towards a light in a dark place, but I knew for a fact that I wasn't dead. I also knew that these were in no way normal circumstances. Following that logic, I walked towards the light. As I got closer, I began hearing blaster fire, beam struggles, and clanking metal. It took forever, but I finally got close enough to make out individual shapes, most of which were moving around like a swarm of bees. As I moved closer, I saw why. A two-sided battle was being waged. One side was flying a torn but still very distinguishable Cadonian laser flag. The other side flew a flag of flames that bore a symbol I didn't recognize. Back and forth they fought, and each time one side scored a hit, a streak of light would rise into the black sky. As the intensity of the battle increased, I realized that these streaks weren't light. They were cracks. Cracks that split the very fabric of space I was standing in. It was only a matter of time before it blew the whole world apart. "Hey! Stop!" I yelled, breaking into a sprint. "Please!" Not sure why I thought they could hear me. They continued fighting harder and harder, ripping the space apart as they did so. "Stop! My voice echoed in the vacuum. The fighters began to slow down until they stopped completely. Their heads turned simultaneously, each of them speaking in different pitches of the same voice.
The torch is ablaze,
they began.
the fuse is lit. Upon your destiny you must gaze. To this planet you must commit to end this war of complete craze.
What do you mean?
The dimensional flame sparked this war, despite its being vanquished once before. Take heed when making the darkness a friend, for it very well may be Speelsa's end.
The warriors turned their heads and started moving towards each other again.
Wait!
I shouted. Too late, however. The warriors connected once more, and the world around me exploded in a flash of white and broken black. When I could see again, I was in a white void. The fighters were gone, and the blackness of the world I was previously in was completely erased. I saw nothing, so walking came as an impulse. I was about to give up hope that I would ever find anything when I heard footsteps behind me. Instinctively, I turned around. Someone was running towards me. It was a female figure from what I could make out, a very familiar one at that. When she got close enough to actually discern her features, I could hardly believe my eyes. Running towards me was... It was... Speelsa? I asked in pure disbelief.
Warrior Pax,
She said, half sobbing and half out of breath.
my friend, please help me.
I'm working on it. You just gotta sit tight.
No, your plan will fail.
How do you mean? Kai and I
I am a seer. I saw and heard everything through Shard.
So my original suspicions were correct. So... She is sending you to a Lolsai? I asked with anger. She was out of breath, but she shook her head.
What I did to conjure her wrath now, I know not. All I know is that whatever you planned previously will fail.
Well, I plan on saving you before that happens. Speelsa's eyes were filled with fear.
How?
I honestly didn't know. I'll think of something.
Please hurry. It's been longer than you think.
Aside from the tears forming in her eyes, the urgency in her voice pulled a question from my mind. What do you mean?
Protocords isn't the only thing with fluid solidity.
It took me a second to process what she meant.
Please. I don't want to die.
My eyes widened in realization. I had to act now. Where are you?
A launch base site at Cybanis.
How long do I have?
I don't know. But please, my friend, wake up.
I summoned every last bit of strength that I had. It surged through me and my vision became blurry. Speelsa's words
Wake up.
echoed in my head. Suddenly, the white space dissolved from around me, and I was back in reality, my power surging through me so much, lightning danced across my armor. I was still lying on my back, but I quickly sat up, hearing Sadalfa Trion's voice immediately to my right.
Buddy,
He said.
you alright?
My response was an otherworldly howl. As I leapt from the bed I was in and ran towards the first set of doors that I saw.
Hey, where are you going, bud?
After hearing what Speelsa said about how much time she had, I couldn't spare him an answer. Blasting the doors with blue energy spheres, I saw enforcement guards marching into the room from the outside. I couldn't stop them, and I couldn't stop for them either. The moment my foot touched the outside, I shifted forms. My hands folded into my wrists, and my forearms folded into my upper arms, and exposed anti-gravity engines which began to glow blue. This formed a rear propulsion system. My head folded into my chest as my legs and torso fused together. This fixture then flipped around to become the front of my high-velocity hovercraft form. After the vehicular lock set in, I gunned the throttle, forcing the enforcement guards to make way, reaching speeds that would have made Kai wish he was never born with vocal cords. Mere seconds after doing so, I crossed the border from Subis Cybin into Planium Cybonis and noticed a gathering. When I got closer, I saw there were more enforcement guards. One of them spotted me and immediately took aim. I gunned it again, shifting out of my hoverlocity form and using my momentum to soar towards the guard that fired. Like a torpedo in water, I spun, extending my left fist, which connected with his jaw and sent him flying backwards. Immediately after, I brought my right palm up, full tossing an energy sphere at the guard that ran up behind him, forcing him flat on his back. Just before hitting the ground, I tucked and shifted back into hoverlocity form, racing past a spread-out group of guards. I came up on a structure that resembled a runway, the only difference being that it was angled very steeply in the direction of the sky. Any guards that weren't down, which was a lot, took aim and fired at me. Enforcer gunfire shots hurt like crazy, but I didn't have time to slow down. I watched as a large and conically shaped vessel rose in front of the angled runway. The whole platform shook, nearly throwing me off balance, but I kept racing. Enforcer shots continued to embed my exterior. The pain was intense, but I knew I had to keep pushing. I didn't make it in time to stop the launch of that vessel, but I gunned it, racing still. Maxing out my hoverlocity speed, I drove up the steeply inclined runway. As the guards continued to fire at me, a few of their shots hit my rear propulsion just as I flew off the runway. I felt a sharp pain as they nearly gave out, but their job was complete. I switched from hoverlocity form back into my jet form. This time, my legs were the main propulsion. Immediately I maxed them out and pursued the vessel. It looked more like a shuttle as it was leaving the atmosphere. I didn't dwell on it though. By the time I caught up to this thing, it was leaving the planet's orbit. Like I said before, my jet form wasn't like the bona fide Cyber Warrior space jet alt modes. Therefore, I knew my thrusters wouldn't last very long outside the planet's atmosphere. They certainly wouldn't last with me pushing them to the max for the majority of the trip. Momentarily, I hit Mach 8, which just barely allowed me to overshoot the shuttle. Immediately after doing so, I managed a semi-instant turnaround and forced my engines to stop myself from going too far just before they gave out. I shifted to Cadenoid form, my arms outstretched, and allowed myself to be slammed by the fast-moving shuttle, ignoring the burning pain in my legs, my arm, and now the pain that surfaced in my chest. After catching my breath and reorienting myself, I summoned and forced my power to surge through my limbs. This allowed me to overcome the inertial forces somewhat, and I went to work on the hull. I popped my drills and used them to cut through the plating of the hull, which housed its navigation systems. Returning my right drill back into my forearm, I fired a beam at the main computer, which deactivated its gyro systems. I then crawled with physical difficulty to the rear end of the shuttle and drilled through the plating of where the fuel tank resided. I shot the fuel tank and it, as expected, detonated almost instantly. This cut off its propulsion, but caused the whole vessel to spin uncontrollably. I thought I heard the creaking of metal, but in the slim atmosphere of Speelsa, I remember it being distinct, uniform, and continuous. It was a scream. I scanned what was left of the ship. My systems indicated there was life in the cargo bay. Speelsa. Shifting once again into my jet form, I forced my thrusters to put me in front of the shuttle hull. This time, when I switched into Cadenoid form, I flew straight into the front of the damaged hull, forcing it to stop in what I now realized was the orbital wake of our planet. Once again, I crawled with difficulty to the underside of the vessel, once again setting to work with my drilling. Being the cargo bay, it wasn't as easy, so I tried a different approach. I summoned my energy blade and made a cut straight into the middle of the shuttle's underside. Afterwards, I placed my hands through the incision and pulled apart. Right there was Speelsa, who looked beaten and downtrodden. The instant the light hit her, she looked at me, her eyes filled with terror and Protocort's tears.
Pax,
She realized.
what are you doing here?
Rescuing you, I said, out of breath and experiencing different pains in different places.
I didn't think you'd make it.
Told you I'd figure something out. Speelsa, still in shock, looked through the hole I just made and down at Speelsa. The fear seemed to momentarily vanish as we orbited.
Our planet. Beautiful.
Don't get nostalgic yet. You're coming back.
I can't go back.
You can. I will personally ensure she doesn't lay a hand on you.
Dear warrior, look at you. You can hardly hold yourself up. You must go back.
I can't. I have a mission, and I intend to see it through. She pulled me into the vessel, and I laid there on the cargo bay floor. You know this isn't right.
I do, but I don't want you to risk her wrath.
And I don't want you to die. Forget her wrath. You're innocent. Nothing can change that.
Yes, but
I told you my mission was to find and save you. I came this far, and I don't intend to turn back.
you don't understand. I know why she's done this. And if you knew what I was, you'd understand why I didn't try to resist.
I felt myself weakening, but I forced myself to stay strong. I know you're immortal. Her face changed to one of panic.
You...
I had my suspicions, which were then confirmed. I also know you and your sister were around in the Sanikue. Speelsa was silent still. I don't care what you are. If you're innocent, you deserve to be back home. Speelsa moved closer to me.
If they caught me with you, they'd kill you, and I'd be in the same place I am now.
I made a promise to succeed, I said, my voice beginning to break, partly from the searing pain in my arms and legs, and partly from sadness. To bring you back.
I know, dear warrior, but you haven't failed anyone, and certainly not me. Perhaps it's just a delay.
What? I asked, protochords forming in my eyes.
You know as well as I do that if re-entry doesn't do you in, taking me back with you won't be much better.
She was right. My body was failing, and I'd have no way to defend myself, much less her.
Don't be sad. I know you and your friend came up with this plan, and I know that you came up with this plan to stop the shuttle rather quickly if I had to wager. Maybe you can figure something else out.
I began to think, realizing that we now had a non-moving shuttle. I could send you somewhere else. I disabled the navigation. If I can give this thing a big enough push, there's nothing anyone can do once you're out of orbit.
But would you really delay your plan that long?
If I have to. I couldn't believe what I had just said. I had worked so hard to save Speelsa, but here I was, sending her even further away. Like you said, not everything can be helped. A playful smile formed on Speelsa's lips.
My own words used against me. You clearly are something else.
I breathed with confliction as I finalized my decision. Stay to the front, I said. Hold on tight, and no matter what, Until you land, stay away from this incision. Speelsa nodded, and I slipped out of the incision I made.
Farewell, my friend. See you soon, I hope.
I smiled the best I could at her, grabbed each side of the hole I made, and pulled them towards the middle. I summoned my energy blade again and used it as a welding torch to seal the hole shut. Only after it was shut did I wipe my eyes. Know that whatever happens, I thought to her, I won't stop until I find you and bring you back safe.
I will be waiting, dear champion.
I resisted the urge to cry right then, but I steeled my nerves and did the best I could to focus. Hang on. I then placed my hands on either side of the welded gash. I gathered my energy and pulled it in my hands, which promptly began to glow. I almost couldn't do it, partly because I was fatigued like never before, but mostly because that unidentifiable emotion surfaced again. I realized that I had to do it, not for my sake, but for Speelsa's. I released my energy. All of it. Everything I poured into a concentrated beam of bluish-white energy shot from my hands and into the darkness of space, taking Speelsa, who was in the shuttle, with it. As the beam moved further away, it turned into a streak of white. It resembled the white streaks in my dream so much, I almost yelled, "Stop," into the vacuum. With all of my power drained, Speelsa's gravity pulled me back to the surface. I lacked the power to change shape, and I knew that if the fall didn't kill me, then the fatigue from staying alive during the fall would. Through dumb luck, I managed to land in the crystal waters that marked the borders between Batalionis and Seum. Scrambling to the surface, I coughed the foreign fluids from my body. When I emerged, I was greeted by a number of gunshots raining down on me again. I turned and saw the entirety of the enforcement guard group with the launch site marching towards me, Pandorianius among them, her eyes now filled with a murderous joy I'd never forget. A group of spectators had amassed to see the ensuing chaos, but I couldn't stick around to count how many there were. I pulled myself out of the water and forced myself into my hoverlocity form. I felt my rear propulsion straining, but I managed to race away from the gunfire. I had to get to Sidalpha to tell him what happened, but there was no way I was going back the way the Divinitus was coming. Due to my exhaustion, I began slowing down considerably. My senses started to fail, and just as quickly, my propulsion systems burned out and exploded. I was thrown out of hoverlocity form. Just as I crashed on the hard ground, everything went black again.